En necrosis de patas, ¿qué antibióticos usamos y si serán local o general?
We would always treat foot rot by intramuscular or by injection. Intramuscular, maybe intravenous, maybe subcutaneous. I know from my visit here for the past few days that you often treat these cases locally. I think the only local treatment we would carry out would be perhaps some topical antibiotic spray. But even then that would not be very common. We would simply lift the foot, make sure there was no stone or stick or other foreign body present between the claws, and once we had confirmed our diagnosis, the treatment would be antibiotic by injection. As I've already said, a range of antibiotics are used, and the majority of antibiotics are effective against foot rot, provided treatment is carried out early. And I think it's absolutely vital that when the lame animal is first seen, the foot should be lifted and treatment applied early on, before the disease becomes too advanced.
Muchas gracias, doctor Blowy. Les solicito encarecidamente, con la exposición sobre desórdenes digestivos del ternero, a cargo del doctor Roger Blowy, quien, como ustedes saben, es de la Facultad de Veterinaria de Bristol, Inglaterra, coeditor de la revista de Medicina Bovina, también de Inglaterra, ganador en varias oportunidades del premio William Hunting. Por favor, doctor Blowy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Are my interpreters there? Ah, hola. ¿Qué tal? Yesterday I was talking about lameness, and I unfortunately got slightly confused over the dose of antibiotic to use in foot baths, and also I perhaps did not explain fully my opinion on the use of foot baths. So if I may this morning, please, I would just like to spend a few minutes explaining my thoughts on the use of foot baths. I believe that foot bathing is of value in the control of lameness. We would use two types of foot bath. The first would be a foot bath of formalin or copper sulfate, which we would use for the control of foot rot, the infection, the deep infection between the claws, and we would also use that for the control of the necrosis of the heel. If you remember, I was very concerned about cows where the heel wore away and the foot tipped. You can see today I have a better pointer. Do you like it? It's good. So if the heel wears away, then the slope of the front of the foot tips, and this will produce sole ulcers. Now, by using a foot bath, of copper sulfate or formalin, this will help to prevent the erosion of the heel. We would normally use approximately 5% formalin in the foot bath, and probably bath approximately once every 2 weeks. But there is no real set pattern. It depends on how severe the environmental conditions are to cause erosion of the heel. Even when the foot bath looks quite dirty, it is surprising how long the formalin remains active for. So I don't think you need to be concerned that it looks rather muddy. Of course, if possible, it's better to have 2 foot baths, one followed by another, as we saw in the pictures yesterday. Because the first foot bath can then contain water. This will wash the feet, and when they again go into the second foot bath, the formalin, or maybe the antibiotic, can penetrate the feet better. For cows that are nervous, and cows often are nervous when they first go through a foot bath, you will often find they deposit their feces in the first foot bath, and that stops them from getting the second foot bath so contaminated. I also talked about the use of antibiotic foot baths in the control of this condition of digital dermatitis. We would only use antibiotics in the control of digital dermatitis. The antibiotics we would use are most commonly lincospectin and oxytetracycline. And the correct dose of oxytetracycline is 6 grams per litre. 6 grams per litre. Apparently yesterday I said 600. Maybe I was trying to fly from the top of the table. There is just one other thing perhaps about foot bathing. I think I said yesterday that recently we have had a very severe form of foot rot appear in a few herds. Almost as if a bomb had exploded between the claws of the feet. And there is some evidence that the use of lincospectin, the antibiotic, the use of lincospectin foot baths are of help in the control of this very serious condition. The type of foot rot that produces such severe lesions can produce an infection of the joint within only 24 hours if it is not treated early. And if the cow develops an infection of the joint, then of course treatment is very difficult. This is why if you have an outbreak of the very severe type of foot rot, then foot bathing with antibiotic is worth considering. That is the end of yesterday's lecture. No. When? Sí. Ahora, buenos días. You will be pleased to know I have now started Saturday. And for Saturday, I would like to talk about calves and calf feeding systems. what I have decided to do is to start by showing some pictures of feeding systems in England, and then we will talk a little about some of the problems associated with feeding, particularly the diseases associated with poor management of feeding. So I am specifically concentrating on those conditions associated with poor management rather than with infectious diseases. So if you wonder why I do not talk about rotavirus and E. coli, it is not just because I am rather ignorant. It is because I want to concentrate on the management aspects. My friend is still in there. I like that. Today I have plenty of pointers. So I think perhaps one is enough. Actually, I did wonder if I could put the two together. No, can't do it. We often think that leaving the calf... You can see the chairman is worried already because he is putting the chairs in beside the table so I cannot get onto the table. I would like him to sit down here, because then if the table collapses, I have something soft to land on. We would perhaps think that simply allowing the calf to run with the cow is a good way of feeding. But I would say immediately that this is very poor management, especially for the freshly calved cow. Because if this one is a young calf, he must suck colostrum. And yet, where will he suck? From this cow? From this cow? From this cow? Or where? And yet it is vitally important that he receives a good suck of colostrum from the correct cow in the first 6 hours of life. We would like to see each calf drink at least 6% of its body weight within the first 6 hours of life. And to achieve this, it is not sufficient simply to leave the calf in the yard. You can see the calf is happy because his tail is up and he is looking. But he is a little like me. Sometimes he gets a bit too excited and is not sure what he is doing. And so he will need some help. And although it is only a small point, I think it is important to make sure that he is guided onto the teat and receives a good suckle of colostrum. If it is a young cow, they are often like many young women. And perhaps they are a little nervous of this sort of thing. I'm sure that does not apply to our interpreters. And also, if it is an older cow, then if the udder is very long, it is very difficult for the calf to put its head up and suckle. Perhaps we could persuade the calf to lie on its back and put its head upwards. But that can also be quite difficult. And it is for reasons like this that we would commonly give the calves colostrum either by a stomach tube or simply feed them with a teat. But the colostrum is extremely important to the calf. It is the calf's passport to life. And unless it has a good suckle of colostrum, all of the diseases which I will be talking about in the next hour or so will become much more common. You can see that even if he tries on his own, he will sometimes push the teat away. So it is simply not sufficient to leave the calf on the cow and hope that the calf knows what to do, especially in a crowded yard or with a nervous heifer or with an old cow with a pendulous udder. After the calf has had colostrum, then they would be put into individual pens. Because our weather situation is different, most of our calves are in house situations, and therefore we would put them in individual pens rather than the perhaps more pleasant system you have of penning them out of doors. I prefer to see pens with solid sides like this, rather than hurdles or gates, because solid sides prevent the transfer of infection from one calf to another. And I think it is like us. If we want to go and talk to the person in the house next door, we would simply put our heads out through the front and have a chat. But sometimes we do not want to chat. We simply want to stay indoors and watch the television. And these calves can do the same thing. You see, the same as you have, we would have two buckets, one for water and one for concentrate. I will return later to talk about the type of concentrate. Bless you. But I believe that a coarse mix like this is much better than the finely ground maize which I have seen fed on some of your farms. When the rumen is developing, in the young calf, the rumen is much more acid than in the older animal. And we therefore need to ensure that we feed the calf so that the acidity does not become excessive. Two very important ways of achieving this are, first of all, to provide some form of long forage. And I do not mind if it is hay or straw, because all I want is for these calves to have long fiber which will stimulate contraction and development of the rumen. The other thing which is important is to have a type of concentrate which will remain in the rumen and which stimulates the calf to chew. If the calf is eating a finely ground material, then it will take a mouthful. It does not have to chew it because it is already ground. It will pass directly into the rumen, and because it is finely ground, the particles can pass immediately out of the rumen and into the abomasum. This, of course, is what the cow is trying to achieve when she is chewing her cud. She is simply grinding fiber into particles which are small enough to pass into the abomasum. Hence, if we feed this coarse mix, you will find that the calves will chew it and because they have to chew, they produce saliva, and saliva contains bicarbonate and phosphate, both of which are very good to neutralize the acid in the rumen. However, if they eat starch, they will swallow it quickly. It may ferment very rapidly in the rumen, and there are many trials which show that if the rumen of the young calf becomes acid, large areas of scar tissue will form on the wall of the rumen, and as a consequence, the rumen does not develop properly, and therefore the calf does not grow properly. In other words, in the future you will be wasting food for that calf. The other point I would like to make is that when feeding the calf, it is best to take away this bucket and then put milk in its place, because the calf needs to know that this one is food and this one is drink. Food for the young calf consists of milk and of concentrate. Drink is water. There is a risk that if you take away the bucket of water and put milk in its place, when you then put the water back into this place, the calf will be slightly confused and drink very large quantities of water. If it drinks very large quantities of water after it has had some milk, then the milk in the abomasum becomes very dilute and we get a very poor milk clot. The other advantage of putting the milk in this position is that when we take away the milk bucket and put in the bucket containing concentrates, the calf immediately puts his head into the concentrate bucket. Some of the solid food is stuck around its nose, and this will encourage the calf to eat. These are types of pens with without solid sides, and although they are okay, I do not think they are as good as solid-sided pens. For group feeding calves, there are many simple systems available. This is one which is quite popular. As you can see, the milk is poured into here, and each calf can have its own teat. There are some cheaper systems which do not have these divisions between the calves. They are not so good because when the calves are feeding without these divisions, it is very easy for one calf to push another calf away, and one calf therefore has too much food and the other calf does not have enough. A few farmers also have computer feeding systems where there is an electronic transponder on the neck of the calf, and the calf then can walk into an automatic machine. The machine recognizes the identity of the calf and feeds the calf the correct amount. You will also see from this calf that we have ringworm in England. This calf has walked into the automatic feeder. Here is the collar which carries the electronic transponder to identify the calf. The milk is then mixed for this calf and may be fed warm or cold depending on the system and the type of milk powder. Unfortunately, even electronic and sophisticated systems need to be carefully watched. Because I believe this is totally unacceptable. This is supposed to be a calf. I put up the diagram because I want to show some of the problems, simple problems associated with feeding. In the calf, you can see the air goes in here, that's this hole, and goes to the back of the throat, and then it has to come across the back of the throat and down the windpipe. Whereas food goes in this hole, food goes in here. Can you translate that? No, there is no Spanish for that. Food goes in here,
and has to go across the air